Hey guys, today we're going to be taking a look at the sparking tier list over on gamepress.gg/dblegends. I've done reviews in this tier list before, different iterations of the tier list, and I have to say they do a very good job at ranking all the units in the game. It's kind of difficult to sit down and be like, okay, yeah, this unit's 100% better than the other one, so they are obviously to be a tier above them, and it gets very tedious because there's so many units in the game at this point. But things are always up to interpretation and personal opinions and stuff like that. But I think as you take a look at this list, and just based off of historical lists that they've put out in the past, these guys they've done a very good job. So I definitely recommend checking out the website. And in particular, what I want to do in this video is take a look at the new units that were released on this banner, the sparking units. So UI Goku, Toppo, Jiren, and Dyspo. And I want to sort of take a look at where they were placed on the tier list, and from there I'll talk about my thoughts on where they are, as well as some things that I would personally change in their placement, if any. So first and foremost, I think we're going to go ahead and save UI Goku for last because I have a special segment I want to do on him specifically. But we'll go ahead and start from the ground up. We'll look at Dyspo first, and Dyspo was placed in tier 1, right next to Vegito Blue. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, that's kind of funny that they placed him right next to him because Dyspo really does kind of feel like I don't want to say watered-down version of Vegito Blue, but it kind of does feel that way. He does similar things with his kit. He draws random cards when he uses cards. He, it's similar playstyle to Vegito Blue, where it's just like combo after combo after combo, and his main utility on the teams that he fits on, mostly Rival Universe and like the whole Pride Trooper team, is he does allow that team to basically stall out and whittle down those timer counts. Very similar to actually what Champa is able to do, but Champa does it by taking damage, and then Dyspo does it by pretty much just chaining together a lot of combos, or a lot of cards one after the other. So Dyspo is a pretty good unit. I feel like one of the biggest strengths that he brings to his team is the fact that his ultimate ability has a 30% chance to inflict feint. And in this meta specifically, feint is very, very powerful because if you're able to inflict an enemy with feint, the units that are, the better units in the game right now do so much damage that if you're able to set up a combo off of that feint, then your chance of winning is going to go just astronomically higher based off of that. He also has a pretty good defensive utility once he switches in. I believe the first 20 counts or so have, like a 30% damage cut. Whereas Vegito Blue, I don't think only has 20, but I believe it's for the first. Let me actually just see if I can pull him up. Let me see if they have the details in here. They do a pretty good job with that generally. Let me see. Yeah, reduces damage received by 30% from Battlestar for 20 counts, and then for the remaining 60 counts, or for 40 more counts after that, it's 20%. So totally it's 50% cover cut. Well, I guess damage reduction for the first 20 counts, and then he has 20 for the next 40. So 50% cut is actually pretty good. It makes it so that he doesn't get one combo by someone like Super Saiyan 3 Zenkai Goku, and who's obviously in every match. Same thing with LF Gohan. So in terms of being able to actually take a hit, I would say he's in a better position than someone like Vegito Blue is. But Vegito Blue, obviously, he guaranteed draws strike cards, which is nice to know that you're going to do that. Dyspo, on the other hand, draws random cards. But I would say he's fairly put on this tier list. I think tier 1 is a nice spot for him, right in the fray of... he's surrounded by very good units, right? Like this Gohan, they're considering him at Zenkai 7, LF, Majin, Vegeta. This Goten's very, very good support unit. Bardock is obviously very good. Vegeta Blue himself. Champa and Vados are both new and very good for their team, the Rival Universe team, so... I see no problem with this specifically. That's pretty much good to go on Dyspo there. Alright, we're moving on to the next section, which is basically going to be Toppo, but also Jiren. I'm going to sort of talk about them both at the same time. This is something that I personally feel can be debated. They have Jiren above Toppo, and they have a few units in between them. But they're both in tier S, which I think is good. I think that's a fair placement for them. Like, tier S is where they belong, I think. So... at least in my experience using Toppo and Jiren, I've used both at, not 14 stars, and then I've used them both at 14 stars. So I sort of had I've experienced them both not at their full potential, and then also at their full potential, see what they can do at max star level. And I've used them both against a variety of opponents. I sort of understand the ins and outs of how good they are, what they lack in doing. And obviously their main team is Rival Universe, and that's where I use them on. There really is no other team you can really put them on unless you want to go color counter team. Like, I know Toppo does buff blue, Jiren buffs green, and Dyspo buffs red. That's because if you're going into the banner and you don't have a Rival Universe set up already, then it's going to be kind of tough to build a team just off of these 3 units by themselves, because you don't have Vados, you don't have Champa, you don't have the Universe, Universe 9 dogs. So that's why I think they ended up giving them the color buffs in their Z ability as well. But in terms of Toppo is a very rare breed of unit, because Toppo actually is able to fulfill every single role in the game pretty well. He does the healing role with his main ability. He does the support role with his main ability and green card. He tanks very well on switching, because he has I believe it's a 30% cover cut just for being on the battlefield, and then another 30% cover cut for cover changing. And then he fulfills the damage role, because he actually just gets a ton of damage from just taking hits. I believe he gives a percentage of that to the other allies as well, so that also fits into the supporting role. Similar to how like Purple Cooler works, where he gets hit by an attack and then he just buffs up his team. So this is a sort of a situation I was talking about with actual Green Metal Cooler. I was talking about this with a little bit, where I was like, I really don't want them to go like, you know, half-assed in terms of defense, where they give him 20% cover cut just so that they can take away some other stuff they would have given him otherwise in terms of offense. But with with Toppo, they really didn't hold back, because Toppo does a lot of things well, but it's not like he doesn't do them well enough, because I would argue that he does do them well enough. He does tank pretty well, although I would say they sort of like marketed him as like this ultra tanky unit, when I would argue that's not the case, but that's not his fault. It's just that everybody hits super hard in this meta. It's not really something you can control. Damage-wise, he does hit very hard. His ultimate has a lock-in, so if you're fighting against a red unit, like, I don't know, LF Gohan maybe, and you're comboing him, you could lock him with his ultimate and then end up killing him with the ult, and then that's pretty much a guaranteed victory at that point. And then in terms of healing, he does that. He reduces sub count with his main ability as well. I mean, this guy does everything. So I would have to say I personally am more impressed with Toppo than I was with Jiren in my overall showcases that I did with them. But that's not to say Jiren's bad. You could definitely make the argument that Jiren is a better unit overall. Let's just talk about Jiren real quick, because we're on the topic of it. I think Jiren is... You could argue... I would not argue against the claim that Jiren is the best unit on this banner. I've seen people make the case that UI Goku's better. I've seen people make the case that Toppo is better, and I've seen people make the case that Jiren is better. So there is an argument to be made that any one of these 3 units is the best one on the new banner. So Jiren is good. I think Blast Armor is the main, I guess, appeal of what he's doing. But the biggest thing that I saw out of Jiren when I was using him was the fact that he nullifies special cover changes for 15 counts up to 2 times. Which is something we've only ever seen before on LF Vegeta Blue's ultimate ability. So the fact that they started giving the normal unique abilities this effect is actually super, super powerful, especially once the new battle system has been implemented, like it is right now. You know, you have teams that have 3 special cover changes on them, and you're just always scared to get to attack. You're like, okay, should I drop combo? Should I not drop combo? With Jiren, he doesn't have to worry about that. You just go in, you attack, he's Jiren, he doesn't care about cover changes, you do a lot of damage, everybody's happy, the opponents are dead, you win. That's what Jiren does. So in terms of the kits that he has, it's mostly just damage and ignoring annoying things, and he's Jiren. Like, that's it. I think in terms of, like, capturing the essence of the character in this unit, they did a very good job, because it's not like he's doing a lot, but what he's doing in terms of damage and just like not caring, he's doing well. So I do think that they did Jiren they didn't do Jiren a disservice by making that the primary focus of what he's able to do. So yeah, that's what he does. But I think if you're looking at, okay, what are these units bringing to the team? What are they bringing to the table? I would have to personally say I like Toppo better than Jiren. So I personally would put Toppo maybe like 1 slot ahead of Jiren. But again, it's very debatable. It's up to interpretation. So let me know down below what you guys think about that. And with that said, we're going to move on to the big one, UI Goku. Okay, so yeah, we got to pretty much the big guy here, UI Goku, LF UI Goku, I guess I should say. But yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and say my overall thoughts on the unit and where I would place him in a tier list. And basically... where I would place him on a tier list, my answer is, I don't know. That might sound stupid, but I don't know how you would evaluate him on a tier list. It's very, very difficult, because he's so different than every other unit in the game in terms of his... it's hard to put it into words, but he is much more skill dependent than any other unit in the game. I would say, funnily enough, actually, him and Namek Goku, I would say, are the two most skill-dependent units in the game. But it's funny because Namek Goku, you would look at him and you'd be like, oh, he's so noob-friendly. You click the blue card and you win. Well, if your opponent knows how to play around him, there's certain techniques you want to take to actually get the blue card off without you getting tackled, without you getting tap blasted, without you getting tap attacked to cancel your blue card. So there's actually a fair amount of tactical fighting abilities that need to go into using this guy to make him effective. And I would say the same thing with UI Goku, but with UI Goku, it's multiplied by like tenfold. The extra gauge that he has is easy to be used by a new player, but it's extremely difficult to master. Like, how should you do? How should you utilize the meter? Should you use it all at once? Should you use it to restore your vanishing gauge? How does your how do your characters that can be switched in look like? I find often that the best way to use the vanishing gauge, and I'm still learning the unit. I'm not by any means an expert on it yet. It's going to take me many fights and attempts with using him to actually figure out the best ways to use him. But I would argue that the best way that I've seen to use him is to utilize his vanishing gauge first, the traditional vanishing gauge. Use that first, and then after that's used, you can use your unique vanishing gauge, and you can use the time that he spends actually dodging, because in those times that he's dodging and using those animations, your regular vanishing gauge is restoring. So by the time you use your first gauge, you should have 2 uses of your other vanishing gauge to use, your unique gauge. Use those 2 unique gauges, and then by the time that those are used, your regular vanishing gauge should be available again. So you're basically going to have 4 vanishes available, or 4 attacks that you're going to be able to vanish, which is very ridiculous. Like, if you think about it, he's the only unit in the game that could even come close to doing that, and I feel, if you're a good player, you should be able to capitalize at least off of one of those vanishes, or just evasions, right? So in that sense, if you're able to do that with relative consistency, I would put him in Z tier. If you're able to do that, right? If you're able to use him to the best that he was designed to be. Like, if you took this unit and you were like, okay, I can use this guy to his utmost potential, and I can actually do that consistently, he's a Z tier unit. He is. But on the other hand, if you're somebody who's not really able to utilize him as well as like somebody who's really good with him, or somebody who's has a ton of experience in using him, and I don't know, I'm not trying to point fingers or make fun of anybody, but like, if you enter the match and you use his 2 unique gauges right away and you switch out, like, it's not really an effective or efficient use of what his unique ability is supposed to be. So in that case, he wouldn't be a Z tier unit. He would most likely be a tier 1 unit, or even lower, to be honest, because he's so fragile that that unique gauge is there to sort of be a fallback and a drawback. Or sorry, his weak defenses are there as a drawback to the fact that he has those additional evasions built into his kit, right? So if you're not able to utilize those effectively, he's essentially just like a very fragile character, right? The other thing to mention about UI Goku is the fact that his green card is probably one of the best green cards in the game. But on the other hand, similar to how we just talked about the vanishing gauge having drawbacks, that also does have drawbacks in the fact that the animation is really long. So if you actually manage to like backstep a green card from this Goku, you're going to get a guaranteed combo started on him, because the animation lasts a long time, and they intentionally did that because it's so good. Like, if you land that green card, you have a much higher percentage chance of winning that game than if you didn't land the green card. So it's a very, very high risk, high reward character, which I think is good for what UI Goku is meant to be thematically in the game. So I think they did a really, really good job designing him. So going back to the question of would I include him in a tier list, I personally would probably put him a little bit higher than where he is right now. I would probably slot him up, maybe where this blue Zenkai Goku is. It's hard to say, because it's either you're good with him or you're not good with him. It's just like, at what point are you evaluating? Like, so for example, we take the rules that they set out for utilizing these units right here. So Legends limited units are evaluated at 3 stars, right? So that's just the rule that they set out for the tier list. That's completely fine. But they should add, actually, I don't know, should they even add this where it's like another rule that they have, like, how skillful do they have the person using UI Goku to be where he's S tier? Like, I don't know, it's weird, right? So again, my answer to where should he go, it might sound like a cop-out, but again, I don't know. Where would you guys put him? He very easily could be a Z-tier unit if you utilize him to the best of his ability. Do I think he's ever better than Super Saiyan 2 Gohan? It's tough. I would say probably not. I don't think he's ever at that point where if you're using him to the best of your ability. Okay, let's put it this way. If you're using LF Gohan to the best of your ability, to the best of his ability allows, and you're using LF UI Goku to the best that his abilities allow, is Goku ever going to compete directly with Zenkai 7 Gohan? And I would say no. I think Gohan is just a better unit overall. He's doing more in terms of just being a stronger, like he's just a stronger unit. He just comes in, he just destroys. Like that's him. And Goku, you need to do more for Goku to be even just on par with Gohan than Gohan has to do to like even be like mediocre, because like he's just ridiculous. So I think at most I would. Okay, so again, as a conclusion, I guess, and I didn't even need to use this because at this point you guys should know what he does. It's been a few days since he released, but if you don't, here's his kit, here's everything you need to know about him, here's everything else. I think if there's one thing I had to change about this unit, I probably would give his special move Blast Armor, because it is a very, very powerful special move in terms of restoring his unique gauge by 50%. But they didn't give it Blast Armor, which is a little bit unfortunate. But other than that, I think they did a really good job designing him. But in conclusion, if I had to give a placement for this unit, at most, I would probably put him bottom of Z tier. I think that's fair. If you're able to utilize him to the best of his ability and he's like, you're really good with him, that's probably where he goes. And then at worst, if you're like a really, really bad player with him, then he probably would be as far down as like tier 2, somewhere in the middle of like tier 2, maybe like over here or something, like next to Hit. I don't know. Because if you're not good with him, he's really bad. Like, like he gets one or two shotted by like any decent yellow unit right now. So in that regard, he's very fragile. But again, you have to use him how he was intended to be used. You have to make use of those additional gauges, additional dodges, so that he can be a good unit. Might sound like a little bit of a cop-out answer, but again, it's just so hard to evaluate him, and even I am still trying to learn how to use him to the best of my abilities, how the developers intended him to be used. So that is going to be it for this one. You guys can let me know down below where you would place him, if you agree with my analysis on how hard he is to place in a tier list, because I do think it is very difficult. I've played against UI Goku players who were very, very bad. I've played against UI Goku players who were very, very good and really impressed me with what he can do. So I am still trying to learn him, and we'll be back with more showcases in the future, trying to perfect how good he can be in PvP. So with that said, I'll see you guys all in the next one.